Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. My name is Devasena, and today I'm going to go over one of the topics that I presented at ICRA recently, which is about using socially supportive robots, but more like the virtual agents, to enhance children's self esteem, their mental well being in general, and also their academics. And just talking a little bit about me. I have my PhD in child robot interaction from the Social and Intelligent Robotics Lab in the University of Osaka, Japan. And I also work as a creative programming instructor for children as well as teenagers at Kinocode Institute. And I'm also a children's author. And I did my master's and bachelor's in robotics and automation and mechanical engineering, respectively, from Amrita University in India. And my technical interests range from human robot interaction, game design, social robots, and all the way to conversational AI. So, getting into the problem itself. When we talk about mental well being from a psychological aspect, it means that it's a positive state about a person's emotional, psychological, and their social health. And when problems in children's mental well being especially happens, it can be divided into two types, where the first one is the externalizing problems. So, this, as you can see in the image, affects the children's external environment. So, it's easily visible to the people, like, okay, the children are agitated or aggressive, and this leads to like problems such as juvenile crimes or which may also lead to adult crime, etc. But there's a more subtle problem, which is the internalizing problem that affects the children's internal emotions. So, this is not easily visible like the external problem. So, it mainly affects children's mental models, the way they look at life, the way they look at social relationships. And this is not easily visible because children act or may act okay outside, but inside they might be suffering. And this is something that we need to look at more closely than externalizing. And that leads us to the problem. That is, there are many human interventions in psychology and developmental psychology that exist targeting internalizing problems. But there are many limitations of such approaches, which brings us to why we need robots. So, the limitations currently in the human led approaches are that it ranges from children being scared of disclosing certain personal things or things that they don't like to talk about to adults, to therapists, or there might be some kind of bias by the therapist itself, like personally if they know the child, or like ethnicity wise, or like social standing wise. And also humans being humans, we cannot look at multiple channels at once. We can only look at the children's current state of mind. We are not capable of identifying the future or the past at the same time when talking to the child. And again, each human is different. Our interpretations are different. So it's not like an AI model that can generalize over a set of training data. So which is why we do not have consistency. And also, there's a shortage of trained professionals in this manner. But when we use robots, and this could be robots that are rule based, pre programmed, or AI based, or LLM based, all of these, they have been known to be working well with children because they disclose secrets or shameful stuff to robots more readily than to humans from literature. And these include social robots like Nao, Pepper, Paro, etc. And they're also non judgmental because children know that they're not alive technically, and they also see them as a friend at the same time, which is why they're more comfortable sharing with them. And also it's more easier to integrate AI models into robots for simultaneous multimodal coding, so we can code the children's speech, children's behavior, everything at the same time. And also scalability, so one robot can serve many children. So with this in mind, I want to look at how can robots help children's mental well-being, such as self-esteem and anxiety overall, in both detecting them and helping them improve. So this study today will be about how to help them improve. So this has been divided into two studies that we conducted in Japan. And the first study is to use a virtual avatar of the physical Commu robot that we have in Japan. So this little guy that you see here is Commu. And this is the CG version of Commu that we created. And here what we're doing is that we have the robot avatar side by side with a game that we developed. So we developed a simple 2D game with some 3D elements in it using Unity. And this game is able to communicate with the CG robot in real time. And children just have to play the game while talking to the robot. And the robot has certain behaviors that we modeled, such as based on the progress of the child, the verbal, non-verbal praise given by the robot, or like assistance throughout the game, or like consistent joint attention with the child, and also helping them play certain levels in the game. And we're trying to see if this helps improve children's global self esteem as well as their peer relationships. So, for that, what we did is first one. So, the role of the agent here is to adjust its real time gaze by tracking the cursor of the child. So, as the child plays the game here, depending on where the child is moving in the game or where the cursor of the child is present, the robot is able to adjust its gaze on the screen. And also, when the child stops playing and starts speaking to the robot, then the robot looks at the child like facing front. And also, it monitors the real time progress and like how many points have the children scored? Are they improving, or is their performance declining? And then how to give them encouragement accordingly. And all of the dialogues and the gestures of this particular agent were rule based in this particular example. And they were all randomized so that the children don't have to hear the same thing or see the same gestures again and again. And there was a Python server running in the background that was connecting both the CG side of the robot to the Unity server. And the game itself, the genre was adventure RPG. So basically, there was this one avatar in the game, an NPC that had to be saved by the children. And the way that they could do this was working alongside the robot. So the robot was kind of like their partner in the game, though it was not directly playing along with them. And it had 3 levels. And once the 3 levels were over, we completed the study. So, to understand the need for a robot or a virtual character, we had two conditions. So, we had one condition where 12 children were playing alongside the robot, and the same game, 12 children were playing just as is without the robot. So, they didn't have a partner, but they just had to like play. And instead of the partner, we gave them hints in the game. So, there was a hints button, and they could press it to get the same kind of hints they would get if the avatar was present. So, just for some uniformity in the variability. And all the children were like 9 to 10 years of age. And we made this a month-long study because, again, self-esteem and mental well-being are subjects that cannot be targeted with a single study. So we need like a continuous 1 month long study so that we understand how children like react over the sessions in a month. And the measures that we used were we had subjective evaluation to understand the level of global self esteem. So we had a pre test and a post test to see how much it increased or decreased. And to understand the peer relationships, we had another subjective evaluation where we asked them questions about how many friends that they had or how happy they felt sharing secrets with their friends or talking with their friends in general. And then we had some objective evaluation that we did post study, which was we had an ML model that was running in order to find on the video, the recorded video, to find how many times the children looked completely away from the screen. And that is to measure the interest. So we had a bounding box that looked at the children's gaze towards the screen, and when they looked away from the screen we counted it as an instance of looking away from the screen. And this would tell us about how much interest that the children have in the system. And this interest was analyzed if they looked away continuously for more than 5 seconds, because sometimes we look away from the screen, but if it's more than 5 seconds, it means they're consistently looking at something else other than concentrating on the game in front of them. And also we evaluated engagement, which is nothing but the valence expression of the child. So we had certain instances of smiling or laughter or excitement. So based on so this engagement evaluation was not done using an ML model. So this was using an ICC evaluation by 2 reviewers. So we manually coded the data set, and then we used ELAN to see the instances where children positively reacted and negatively reacted to understand overall what was their valence. And coming to the timeline, we started off with an introduction session. We went to two schools and conducted this study. And after the introduction, we had a pre-test where they filled all the questionnaires, and then they participated in the experiment for a month. And they participated once a week. So totally, each child had 3 sessions with the game. And finally, we gave them stickers of the robot and the post-test. So, just to give you an example of what I've been talking about regarding the game and the robot, here's a video of all the 3 levels and how the robot acts in them.
You did it! Thomas, being your hard work makes me really happy and proud of you. You are so clever. Thomas, funny, I'm impressed. Did you see that the color red got added to the rainbow?
Okay, so now that we looked at the system architecture, the methodology, and everything, coming to the results, our primary measure was the global self esteem. And as we can see from the graph, especially the blue line, in the experimental condition, there was a significant increase from pre test to post test. This means that from before the experiment to after a month, children's global self esteem increased. So, by global self esteem, I mean their overall self esteem had significantly increased with a medium effect size, whereas the control group remained almost like zero change, so there was no change in the control group. And coming to the peer relationships, in the experimental group, children reported having significantly more friends post study. So they were able to cultivate their social standing and make more friends. Whereas in the control group, we see that there is an increase, but this was not significant enough. And this was by a large effect size. And similarly, with the quality of the friendships, we can see that in the experimental group from pre test to post test, the ease of sharing secrets with the friends significantly increased, whereas in the control condition, we see a decrease in this. So, what it means is that the quantity and the quality of the peer relationships of the children, human relationships, increased. And they also counted the CG agent as one of their friends when they counted like how many friends that they had post study, which was interesting to see. And looking at the interest and engagement, we saw there was an increased positive valence in the experimental group. So all the children over the time, like over the sessions, reacted positively to the agent and the game. So there was no decline in the interest or the valence. Whereas in the control group, we saw a decline in the interest, which is kind of expected when you have to play the same game again and again, even if there's a little variation in the games without an agent to talk to. So, coming to the study two, now that we saw a gameplay situation, we also wanted to test if the same kind of agent in an e learning situation would produce similar effects. So, we had the same agent, just albeit with a different costume, and we put the agent in a math e learning environment. So, Khan Academy is a well known e-learning platform for different kind of subjects, and we chose math for this because it's one of the easier subjects to quantitate as well. And we also developed certain behaviors inside the robot, including joint attention or refocusing back on the sum, and also like predictable movements, giving them breaks in between the study, which was for 45 minutes, etc. And here we wanted to look at their improvement in their academic self esteem. Previously, we looked at global, now we look at academic. So here what happened was that there was a Python server again running real time, communicating between Khan Academy and the agent. So here the agent in this case, the difference is that in the first case, in the first study, we saw that the agent was static on one half of the screen. Whereas here, the agent is able to move around the screen, just like if you remember the Microsoft Clippy that we had way back during the day. So that was one of the motivation behind creating the design of such a movable agent, because this helps the children to notice where they have to concentrate on the screen. And so what we did was have the robot dynamically adjust its position on the screen. So all the XY coordinates of where the question was appearing on the screen was sent from Khan Academy to the robot in real time via Python, and it was able to adjust according to it. And also, it can increase and decrease in size. So, whenever the children are solving a problem, it is supposed to be non distracting because we don't want the children to talk to the agent or look at the agent instead of doing math. So, which is why we made it really tiny and just made it like point towards the problem which is drawing attention, and then go back to its own desk, sitting and simply silently observing the problem as the children solve. Whereas when the robot is giving breaks to the child or trying to encourage the child to do better if their progress is declining, it increases in size and there's a gray overlay on the screen to capture the children's attention, and then the robot speaks to them. So this is basically the dialogues, which were also again rule based. And the break system was done in such a way that over the 40 or 45 minutes of the whole session that we had, the break was triggered every 7 minutes. And this was because we worked with psychologists to understand what would be the good or correct ratio to give them the breaks. And through trial and error, we found that every 7 minutes is a good start. And coming to the conditions, similar to study one, in the experimental, we had children solving the math problems with the presence of the robot, and in the control, we had children just solving the same math problem. So, we wanted to see that in online learning, which is becoming more and more pronounced these days, children lose interest easily. So, if they have to sit and solve a particular lesson for 45 minutes straight, it's really hard for them. So, how can we have an agent that can help them refocus and not lose that attention, but at the same time, via its encouragement and its behavior and its presence, also increase their confidence in their academic capabilities? So that was basically the aim here. And all the children were again 10 to 11 years of age. And this was also a month long study where the children interacted once a week. So each child did this whole experience for a total of 3 times. And for measures, again, we had a subjective questionnaire for academic self esteem and an objective evaluation for the math performance. So we automatically logged children's accuracy and efficiency of the math performance of each session from the log data of Khan Academy. And then the same way we quantified interest and engagement from study one, we did it in study two. So again, interest was using an ML model and engagement was by manual coding. And the timeline was introduction session, again followed by pre-test, experiment, and an incentive plus post-test session. So again, here's a small video to help you understand better. So as you can see, the robot is not talking while children are solving. Here a break is triggered.
Hey, guess what? It's time for a little fun. Watching a fun video will give you some rest. Please watch now.
And then a video is played. And once the video is done,
alright. Time to get back. See this problem here? Please continue solving it.
and then it goes back to its position and goes back to the observing behavior. So that is how the system works. And our results showed that in the experimental group, there was a significant increase in the academic self-esteem, whereas almost a zero change was observed in the control condition, similar to study one. And in the secondary results, math performance, as you can see, there was a significant increase over time as well in the experimental condition. So from the first week to the last week of the whole experiment, we see that constantly it's slowly increasing. Whereas in the control condition, it's haphazard, it suddenly decreases, and overall, it still remains decreased from the first week. And in the same with the efficiency of math problems as well, there's a steady increase in the experimental and a steady decrease in the control condition. And we also found that this math performance was correlated with the academic self esteem, which means that when we create systems that target the academic self esteem of the child, it automatically targets their math or academic performance as well, which can be helpful for future designers if we want to look at or target other subjects other than math. And similar to study one, we also saw an increase in the positive balance and a maintenance in their interest throughout the 1 month, which was also the secondary aim of this whole experiment. So, keeping this in mind, I would like to conclude today by saying that this was what we achieved in improving their self esteem and also their peer relationships and their engagement with the system, interest, academics, etc. And if you're interested to see how we automatically also measured their self-esteem using an ML model, an LLM, you can look at our papers that I've linked along with this PPT as well. So the future work of this particular system is that currently we targeted schools. So we are in the fully autonomous yet mild or early diagnosis children. So the y-axis is basically the population severity, and the x-axis is how much is a human in the loop. So the autonomy of the system. So currently, all our systems were fully autonomous, no human in the loop, and but the children were like mildly diagnosed with low self-esteem or anxiety. Whereas from here, the next step would be to move on to homes, where we move on to more human in the loop. So we want to see that in a more less structured setting, such as like homes, how does it work? And then from there, we go to clinics, so a more clinical population. And finally, the end goal is to have a daily life system where even like with zero human intervention for severe clinically diagnosed children, such a system can help improve them. So thank you very much for listening today, and I'd be happy if you have any questions.